quality, we suggest closing other programs on your computer, especially other browser tabs. Your inbox will still be there at the end of the session, I promise. If you have any other problems or questions, association staff are available to help. Give us a call at 610-708-3010 or send us an email at info@publicgardens.org. Second, while this session has been pre-recorded, the presenters are here with us today as panelists and will be happy to take your questions in the live question and answer portions of the session. At some point during this session, the presenters may activate a poll. Poll responses are anonymous, so be sure to let us know how you really feel. Finally, you can submit your questions using Zoom's Q&A function that you will find in your Zoom toolbar. Questions can be submitted anonymously. You can also upvote other questions to indicate you would like to hear them answered. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during the live Q&A portion of this session. Some questions may be answered directly through the Q&A feature. Thank you, and enjoy today's session.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to our session about making your website bloom. I'm Kate Gibson, and I'm the Web Team Project Manager for Back Office Thinking. And I have Paul Kogan here with us, our CEO. So let's get started. It's 2020. You probably already have a website. You may want to update it or redesign it, but you may feel in the woods. There's no path, no direction, and it might seem overwhelming. We are here to help you develop an approach and think through the process. Before we go into details of driving users to your site or guiding them through the experience, we need to address your website needs, and not all nonprofits are the same. In our experience, we see traditional nonprofits, cultural institutions, and associations. We see gardens as cultural institutions similar to museums or zoos. You are visitation-based, and you need to provide your users with the options for viewing your content as well as visiting you.
The one thing, though, is that there are a lot of garden needs that are very similar. A lot of people, a lot of organizations need membership or donations, programs or events, and admission tickets. And now, with the changes in 2020, you're probably looking at a lot of virtual events as well. Keeping your memberships engaged is really going to be. But not every garden needs everything, and that's super important, where really you want to figure out first what's essential that you need to make your website very successful. Why are you investing all of this money and this time to make this happen? And what we've boiled it down to a few factors, and obviously there's a lot more. Gardens do have similar needs, but across different categories based on things like size and other factors, there are a lot of differences. For example, what type of website tool is going to be your primary tool? Are you going to be using Wix, WordPress, or Drupal? And generally speaking, if the more complex and larger you are, the more you're going to apt to move to something like WordPress or Drupal. And for smaller organizations, using a Wix site or a very simple WordPress template may be all that you need. Smaller sites we also recommend sort of a template design, meaning that it's not something that's custom that you're using sort of an experienced web designer to develop. You're maybe just tweaking something that is already out there in the market. That reduces costs a lot. And then form tools. This is really important for gardens because you want to engage people and then have them do something, right? You want them to subscribe or to come to an event or donate or become a member. And it's really important that you have these tools in place. And of course, there's like your subscription and marketing features. Larger gardens can actually, if you have the budget and the skill sets, you can figure out how are people moving throughout your site. What should we be doing? And for smaller gardens, maybe you're just getting a basic subscription service out there. There are a lot of similarities. The key things are that you need to engage your constituents, and you need to make sure that you have a process to ensure your success. And that's primarily what we're going to be talking about today. We're not going to be talking too much about whether it's Drupal or WordPress or some of the tools involved. We're going to be talking more about how to make sure that you're successfully engaging your constituents in this website redesign or or refactoring. And then later on, we're going to talk about our process to ensure success, which you can utilize on your own or with us or any other consultant that you're working with. First of all, there are many beautiful websites out there, and we're not going to teach you how to design them. That's really a different session, but what we're going to try to help you understand is how is your audience unique and how to bring them on a journey. And also, like I said, then the process of designing the website. And again, this can be augmented for almost any garden out there. Let's talk about the engaged constituent. There are 3 primary steps for this. Driving someone to your website, guiding them through to where you want them to go, and then converting them. And the converting them is that action, whether it's a subscription or a membership, but they're going to do something on your website. First is to drive them. And make sure you're not texting and driving, which you see in this graphic, but driving them is certainly key. First, there's word of mouth. Now, people say, well, what does this have to do with my website? Well, generally, when you talk to someone about a website, they're going to hold up their phone and they're going to find on their phone or their laptop, well, what is this organization all about? And where are they going? Are they going to your homepage? Well, sort of, right? They're going to Google it. And they're going to go and they're going to type in your garden name, and something's going to come up. If you've designed your Google, I'm calling it homepage, well, then it will make sense to them. It will show them things like, how to get there, maybe directions, maybe some ratings, different events. This is absolutely critical. A lot of people do not see this from a website redesign or refactoring standpoint, but this is something that you should be doing every day to drive people through and make sure that your Google homepage is well designed and meets your needs. The other thing is you should show up on top of this search engine search. If you're not, it's probably not because of some funky factor on SEO or anything like that. Google's really good now at making sure that that's not the case. It probably means you have some problem with your website. So you might want to take a look at that. The other part for gardens specifically that's really important is these events. So if you have events, and here's an example of Longwood Gardens, they've designed their website such that the events, when you type in Longwood Garden events, shows right up here. So again, people don't even need to go to your website, right? But if you design your website well and you've structured the data well in Google, it's going to come up. So this is really an important part of your website refactoring. Next, there's driving people. And first, we're going to talk about the organic driving. This means basically how are you driving people without paying for them to come to your website. First, you're going to want to really leverage your network. This is your people in your social media, your members, your visitors, and your partners, and your promoters. And again, what does this have to do with your website redesign? Well, how are people, getting to your site, and when you're driving them there, okay, what do they want to see? This is a really important slide. It's got a little more graphics on it than most of what we have, and I want to explain it to you. We've coined this the alpha campaign strategy. So at the very middle of this, these concentric circles is you. This is your garden. Next out is your community, which involves something called an alpha audience, which I'll talk about in a second. That community that you can talk to directly, whether it be through email or social media, or even like word of mouth, those are the people that you can talk to directly. For that community then can talk to their network, and then the network, if they're very interested, will share it with the crowd. When something goes viral, basically it means that there's a lot of people in the community sharing it with their network and sharing it with that crowd. But it's really important to also understand that there's only going to be a few people really that drive things out to their network and the crowd, and those are called your alpha audience. You need to know who these people are because they're sharing things about your site or about other sites frequently. So you need to know who they are. These are going to be people with large social media followings, maybe an influential position in the community. but making sure that they know who you are and how you're operating and what's going on your garden is super important. So before you get started on a website redesign, you want to figure out who these people are and what's interesting to them. What's going to drive them to talk about your garden? What's going to drive them to share your social media posts? So, bring them in for lunch. Maybe today you can't do that as much, but hopefully soon we can start accessing our alpha audiences a lot more. Next, we have targeted driving. So this is basically with advertising, whether you use Google AdWords or Facebook or any type of social media. And this costs money, but in general, it's not too expensive. I'm not going to go through all of these right now, but we're going to talk a little bit about micro targeting in Facebook. Facebook has this really powerful micro-targeting platform, and you can basically create audiences that you want to target very effectively. It's what we recommend for almost all of our clients. They can be constituents and donors. They could have shared interests about gardens or outdoors activities or just conservation in general, and you can target very specific audience that way. If you haven't used that, we highly recommend that you start, and we can certainly answer any questions that you have at the end of this presentation. A couple key things with Facebook ads, though, or at least one key one, is that Facebook, as you probably know, is really targeting, making sure that there's no illegitimate advertising or illegitimate posts. And you may think you have something that is perfectly fine, but we have definitely had clients that they were expecting to target someone with a Facebook ad and it got rejected. So you want to go through a few processes, making sure that the first time you're going to do this, that you have an idea of how to move through this different process of getting your Facebook ad approved.
Just to add, Paul, I think it's important to point out that the Facebook ads also work on Instagram, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Instagram and Facebook, the advertising platforms are tied together. And we're not talking about boosting here. We're talking about micro ads. Boosting is very generic. You can't really target very well at all. It's just basically magnifying your presence, but it's not targeting those exact people who you want to come visit your garden. And email tips are really pretty straightforward. You probably know most of these, but you want to be tying people to specific pages on your website. So think about what are the email campaigns that you want to have, and make sure that your website has landing pages for these. So if you're going to be doing a lot of different and varied ones, well, that may mean that you're going to have a website that has a lot of landing pages that you can target people to. The last thing you want to do is just drive everyone to your home page where the message that you just sent them is now confused with all the messages on your home page. So it's really important that you're targeting people to that page. And the other thing is basically keep it short and keep it targeted. So whether you're talking to parents or conservationists, you want to make sure that you're really hitting that particular market. It's no longer are the days effective where you can send one email out to all of your constituents. It doesn't really work that way. It will get buried. You might get lucky with a small percentage, but you will absolutely do better if you can drive these emails. And then again, figuring out if these are successful, how do I need to redesign and structure my website so that I can take advantage of this marketing money that I'm spending on email or on Facebook? Lastly, I'm not going to go into this too much, but if you're a larger garden and have marketing skill sets in your organization, you can do true personalization through marketing automation. You can use, Salesforce has a lot of different areas in this. Of course, you've probably heard of HubSpot, but you can do a lot even with some lesser priced tools like MailChimp and sort of Campaign Monitor. You may want to start there. So if you haven't done anything, look at MailChimp and see how you can target, you can sort of target there. And again, think about how would I drive these people to my website to make the most bang for my buck.
So after you drive your audience to the site, you need to guide them through your website to the relevant content. And we do that through design choices. So let's talk about some of the key factors. The first component of driving your user is the user experience. So you want to make a good first impression. You want to make a human connection. We are all drawn to images. Visitors want to see themselves at your garden. And you want to help them daydream that experience, right? So I have a couple examples I can show in a little bit. But basically, that is your kind of starting point on your homepage. So here we have an example. This isn't a garden space. This is a museum, but you can see right away we have a person that's engaged in art. Like I can identify myself with her. You see very little text and it's very visual. And then the user kind of scrolls to find out more information. So Paul, if you, there you go. And the next one, we can see some examples transferring those concepts into a garden space. So you have people in the garden enjoying the space. So now that you have made a good first impression, you want to create the journey for your visitor. They want to learn more, and you need to kind of get them through the website. So first, you need to have clear call to actions. That's links and buttons that have kind of a very simple decision for your user. Something like learn or visit or donate, something that kind of drives them to take action. You also want to minimize complexity and distractions. So sometimes we have this urge to kind of have as much information as possible to present everything you have about your institution, because there's so much info. But you really don't want to overwhelm the user. You want to keep it simple. You don't want to use your menus as kind of indexes, like the index on the back of the book. You would see where every word in the book is outlined. You want to keep it very simple for them. And another thing you want to do is give them some search options. So this could be like a center or some kind of directory where people can search for information. Google has made us very good at searching. Everybody's super familiar with the concept of keyword searching. So make it easy for your user to find the information.
One of the things we like to tell people is that assume that people coming to your site need navigation as if they know nothing about your organization.
Yes.
For people who are experienced, they'll easily find things. But for the very inexperienced person about your site or your organization, you want to make it very, very simple.
So let's take a look at an example. Here we have a sample page where, right as you get to the site, you see what they are about. They have a state space, they have a museum, they have gardens. You have kind of easy buttons, to explore, to visit, to see the gardens, to see the events. It's, very simple for the visitor right away to see where they need to go. And then the other part of the navigation is creating landing pages. So Paul touched on that a little bit earlier, but basically think of your landing pages as kind of mini home pages. So this is like the place where you want to zero in on specific content. So you have, a user that's been to your homepage. They want to see more information, for example, about your campaign, about a specific program, maybe some kind of special event you're having. So have a landing page for that content where they can easily find everything. Another big part for gardens, maybe it's a little hard to manage right now, but hopefully soon you get more activity there, is the calendars. So you want to have a clear navigation. As an end user, when I go to a garden website, I want to know right away, like, what events do you have? What are your hours? How do I visit? And how do I make sure I have the right information? So here we have an example. We recommend having, a calendar, an easy option to sign up or order without having kind of too much text, too many images. You don't want to distract your user. If they're at this page already, you want to get them through the process as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think a calendar for a garden is super important, and we've seen really poorly designed ones really frustrate users, and very well designed ones enhance their capabilities a lot and helps them make the right decisions for what they want to see and do. So now that you have their interest, right, you want to convert them. So let's think about, how do we convert these garden website visitors to do what it is that we want them to do? So we're going to talk about simple forms, right? So you want to really have easy forms. So like, how do you design these forms? What's important? You know, these can be for a variety of things, from, you know, becoming a volunteer, a member, education series, subscription, register for event. You're going to have forms on your website. The second thing is getting that, or the example of a good form is an email form. It's the simplest one. Every garden should have one. It's the easiest thing for someone to do. You want to give them the ability to subscribe. So you've got their interest. You want to have a very simple form. Here's one where you do not want to collect any information besides maybe their name, but sometimes just their email. And that's what we generally recommend. And you need to give them a reason to join. So hopefully they've been to a page, they've looked at some things, and you then can target where these forms are on your website. We also can recommend sometimes using like a light box or a floating bar type of a slide in. And if they're done well, they're not obnoxious. They certainly can be, but if you have these designed well and you think through what's the workflow on this, what's the user flow on this, what's the user design, they can be extremely effective. Same thing for like membership. And membership is probably one of the most important pages for a garden. Think mobile, right? Someone's on your site, someone's working with someone, and maybe they're about to buy a ticket and they're like, wow, if I just joined, it would be a lot easier. So having a very mobile-friendly membership page is absolutely critical. And like Kate said earlier, limit the distractions on these pages. You want to show them something clear and concise, fewest fields as possible. And if you're doing membership and there's different types, having clear costs and having clear differences between those. And you know, also you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of like images around that would distract them. Here's an example of a membership page that we designed. I think this is for the National Tropical Botanical Garden. They have 5 different memberships, but you can see it's pretty easy to distinguish what's important about them and how they're different. This type of grid design we've used a number of times, and it's very, very easy for someone to understand what they need to do next and what membership is the easiest for them or the most appropriate for them to use. And if you can pick sort of one complex form to design on your website, this is the one that you want to pick, because if the membership is confusing, they're not going to join online. Simple as that. We are in a new world, and besides some of the things we just talked about, there's other things that you need to consider today that you probably didn't need to consider 6 months ago, or maybe even 2 months ago. So going into your redesign, we figure a redesign is good for somewhere between 3 to 5 years, and a refactoring, you should take a look at that once every 1 to 2 years, where you're not making major changes, but you are making some changes because things have changed in your garden and in the world. So right now, what's changed, right? 1, outdoor is safer than indoor. How does your garden represent that? If you're taking a look at your home page and it primarily shows your indoor spaces, well, maybe you want to change that. So you want to think about, how do I make outdoors? How do I really want to emphasize the outdoor? For gardens, this is generally pretty easy to do. Some organizations maybe not so much. So you have a natural advantage here. There's also lots of options in the virtual world. So how does that affect you? You may be trying to do a lot of different virtual tours and things like that. And you're going to have a lot more competition. You have less competition in this outdoor world today. So please consider that. And the other thing is, people are really reconsidering what memberships that they're joining, that they're keeping. So you want to make sure that you have really defined value of your membership. And last part, as we've been seeing, recently, is you need to think about who traditionally came to your garden. Do we need to deal with in the fact that maybe we have people who've generally come who are more of a more privileged nature. There's probably more talks on this today or at this conference on how to engage people who maybe haven't engaged in your garden as much, but you want to think about that from a website perspective as well. And very specifically, things for you guys to consider are micro-targeting or marketing. parents stuck indoors is a great micro target today. And you can have a lot of fun with that one too. Also, is there content behind the firewall, virtual tours, resources? You might be able to get people who are not local to join if there's really good content behind that firewall. This also can be true for like different special events. So, let's say it's time for a particular part of your garden to be at its highlight. Maybe it's tulips, maybe it's azaleas. There could be a variety of different things. So you want to highlight that in your social media and maybe drive people through your website and have this special event live. So you may be having an expert walking through the garden with them and making sure that you set that up so that at the end they may want to join, become a member, or potentially come and visit at some other time. So these are some things that you want to consider, even more so in our sort of brave new world that we're in, that we maybe not thought about a couple of months ago.
I think, Paul, those are some great tips, but the overarching theme I'm seeing is you just have to be agile. Things are changing so fast, and we just have to go with it. That's the only option we have. And whenever you run across an obstacle, try to turn it into, an advantage. Try to think of a way out of it.
That's a great tip.
And now that we kind of thought about how our current situation has really changed the way we think, I would want to go through our redesign process. So this is really an area I work in a lot, so I'm very passionate, and I'll try not to do too many details, but here's an overview of our website redesign process. So there are some key stages we always go through. We have discovery, we have design, implementation, and then refactoring. So Paul, if you can jump to the next one. I don't want to go into too many details about the component of each component. I'm sure you don't have all day to talk about this, even though I could. But I want to highlight the very beginning and the end over here. So, when you think of website, everybody considers design and implementation. You want to design the website and you want to launch it. But I want to urge you to also consider what happens before and after. So you have to do some kind of discovery process, and I'll give you some details. And after you have a website, you have to refactor, you have to revisit it and think about, what is it now and what should it be next? So let's go ahead and jump into discovery. So the first part of discovery really is getting to know your audience, right? So you want to think about, some visitor personas. So this is kind of like a thought exercise of who could be coming to your garden. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a researcher, anything like that. And you want to attach some details to their story so that as you go through your website process, you always reference those personas. And for example, if you have, Kate, who's a parent of a toddler that's stuck at home right now, just hypothetically, then as you're going through the design process, you can say, okay, what would Kate need on this specific page? And then as you go through the website, once you have your audience in mind, you want to consider your homepage versus your landing pages. So, your homepage would have just some minimum information, lots of images, engaging, content. But the landing pages will really hit the different personas and give you more information as an end user. So what do you want to do? What you want your audience to do is another question you have to consider. We've talked about call to actions a little bit. Keep it practical. I will repeat it because this is important. Things like visit, join, donate, volunteer, become a member, drive them to participate. And also at this stage, you want to define your key performance indicators. So if, your personas include parents, maybe you want to, as part of your KPIs, increase membership for families or something like that. So let's take a look at the next part of discovery process. So here we kind of do a little bit of inventory or a checklist. So you want to review your features and your technology. How is your website built now, or how would you want it to be built? Are you using a content management system, something like WordPress, Drupal, Wix, or maybe you have a custom site? Do you want a calendar? What does it look like now? What does it need? Do you have a portal for your members? Any CRM or kind of ticketing system? Do you want to include social media? I hope you do. It's super important now. Do you need a single sign-on? Maybe you have some kind of membership content where you need the users to be logged in and kind of have a smoother experience. So you kind of do your checklist, you think of all the text, the tech, the features, and you want to define a scope. So you don't want to go too crazy. Paul pointed out earlier, you want to think about what's essential to you. You don't need to have everything on your website. And the last piece is you want to consider your solution approach. So you're going the custom route, or are you going to go the template route, which is a little bit faster or easier? Okay, so when it comes to design, the second part of our process, I think, we can touch on some key concepts, but I certainly can't cover all of website design in about 3 minutes. So I'll just cover the key rules we kind of stick to. So you want to have a clean and clear design. You want to have simple messaging. You don't want to try too hard with, having too much information or anything like that. You want to remember that your front page or your homepage is designed to just start your relationship, right? So, have basic information, have engaging images, videos. If you can have videos, that's great. And then, the other content will be on other pages. I think the visual aspect of it should be easy for all gardens. I mean, you should have amazing images of all your space. So keep it as visual as you can, because even though, we like to think we read, people don't want to read. Like, we just want to look at pictures and videos and enjoy ourselves, right? And most importantly, keep your usability in mind when you design. So, as much as images and videos can be helpful, make sure the website is usable. Make sure they're not kind of overwhelming, and that the user has the next steps.
When we talk usability, we sometimes talk journey as well. So making sure that your design is, when we talk about usability, not just like, is it usable on a mobile device and is it usable on a desktop, but is that person that you're targeting who's come to your website through all the stuff we talked about earlier, is it obvious for them, maybe even subconsciously, how to move through your site and get to where you want them to go? That's really, when it comes to that information architecture, makes a strong usability.
So we touched a little bit on the journey. So, just to review, you want to address the different audience types or your personas and their needs. Like, this is where the journey really comes in. You have a homepage, and then all these different personas will go different ways, and you want to make sure you have that content for them. Again, your menu is not an index, so, have a journey. Don't just list out everything you have. And rely on things like centers and search tools to help your user kind of, browse for more or use the keywords to find the right content. And then the landing pages, they're kind of like your side doors for different audience types. So you might have a user that gets to your site from Google and they're, on a homepage, but you might also have someone who Googles a specific event and you need a landing page for that event. They might not start on your website homepage, even though it's called home. Not everybody starts there. This sums up the key of our design process. The human brain is drawn towards clarity and away from clutter. I can't kind of teach design, but that's like your key principle. Okay, so we've gone through discovery. We talked about design, and next is the website implementation. So for a lot of people, implementation means we just launch the website, right? It's launched, it's ready, and we're done. If I work at a garden, implementation is not for me, right? It's just for the designers and the website developers. That I'm not involved. And really, for me, I can't stress it enough that the implementation is a collaborative process. So it's not just a consultant or a designer or a developer. It's you too. You need to be an active participant and do your homework. You need to consider your content. So are you migrating some content? Are you just having new content? Usually it's a mixed bag. You will have some existing content, some new stuff that you're creating. And And then you want to also have customized training. So I'm sure you have, you know, a lot of people in your garden, and some people might be more familiar with the technology you're using and others might be joining in new. So you want to accommodate different needs. If someone, for example, knows how to use a Drupal site, they might need a little less help. But if someone has never edited a website, that can be overwhelming. So you need to be there for them and kind of assess everybody's needs. So we've done, you know, once we've done the training, we do user acceptance testing. So this is your chance to kind of review everything and be an active participant in kind of like the quality check of the website. So we make sure everything looks good, you know, all the buttons are right, there's no misinformation, maybe, you know, we misinterpreted something, or, you know, maybe we didn't go into as many, as in depth into the details as you wanted. So, you know, this is the time where we kind of review everything and make sure we're on the same page. And lastly, we need to address how will we measure your KPIs. So, you know, if you have a specific goal of increasing membership, increasing visits, or, you know, having more newsletter signups, we need a way to measure that stuff. The last step, and this is a never-ending step, is to refactor and maintain your website. Once you launch it, it is your process is not done. This is kind of just the beginning of an ongoing process. You want to always revisit your website. You cannot improve what you do not measure. So that's why you need to have those KPIs. You can review some visuals. So one tool we recommend is Hotjar, where you can actually see a click path of a user. You can see, you know, down to the detail of how long did they spend on a specific page or part of a page. You can see heat maps of which buttons they click on the most. So tools like that can be really helpful to kind of reevaluate your website and think about what changes do you want to make next year, you know, in a few years.
Yeah, I think one point on Hotjar is some people, well, I already see that information in Google Analytics, but that's really not true. The two things that Hotjar can give you, or a visual tool like Hotjar, is number one is if there are, let's say there are 3 buttons that say join on a page, Google doesn't know which one that you've hit, or you have to do something special to make that happen. With Hotjar, you can see it. You can see which ones, and you can see those different heat maps. The other thing that doesn't tell you is, oh, well, this page now all of a sudden people are spending more time on it. Isn't that good? Well, maybe it's not good. Maybe they're just confused. There are certain pages that you want them to be moving to and away from fairly quickly. So in Hotjar, you can, as Kate said, you can watch them screen. They can be moving up and down, and they may be confused on where to go. We've got plenty of examples of websites that we think we've designed very, very well, but wow, this one page, it confused somebody. And if you're not measuring it, then in a week, a month, or whatever, you're going to be limiting the effectiveness of that page and the effectiveness of your design. We also recommend, like Kate said, doing this not just after launch, although that is the most important time, is do that again in another 3 to 6 months. Focus on a particular area. Continually look at these things. Maybe not your entire website, it takes too much time and effort, but you can probably pick a sector to sort of do that with.
Yeah, so I think, to sum it up, I think really like your website is like your garden space. Like once you make the garden space, you're gonna have to maintain it continually, and you will be adding new things to it. And you have to do the same with your site. We've come to the end of our journey, and hopefully you feel kind of a little bit out of the woods. We have created a path for you and helped you through the process. I think we can open up the room for some questions, unless, Paul, you have any kind of closing comments?
Again, thanks for attending. And at this point, love to answer any of your questions, and feel free to reach out to Kate or I or Brad DeForest, who some of you may know, will also be here joining us for our Q&A. Take care.
All right,
hello,
thank you.
Paul and Brad. Thank you. And Kate, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to have you all here live with us today to answer questions.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. We've got a lot of great questions for you. And obviously you're hitting some, very relevant topics right now for a lot of gardens. Folks are working hard making these connections. So I think that a lot of your content is going to be very absorbed quickly and happily by our members. Here's a question from an attendee. How do you recommend designing your home for multiple personas, your home page, not your home, your home page for multiple personas while not trying to be all things to all people on one page?
Yeah.
Sounds like a really hard question.
Yeah, that's a really insightful question. It's one of the challenges as designers and as we work with gardens, like how do we prioritize, how do we consider the different users and what they need. So someone who wants to come and visit your garden, like that's obviously a high priority. Like that's not hard to figure out. So we want to make that really obvious. And the other thing I often say is the person who has never been to your site should also be a high priority, and you want to make it really clear. So the real estate above the fold, when they first come to the site, you really want to strategically think about that. Some users, you may make them scroll down to get to where they need to go. Others, you want it to be right at the top, like get tickets or become a member. Those are going to be ones that rise to the top.
I see there's a question that came in. What is the most important thing you would tell people to change about their website if they could do one thing? I've got my thoughts,
That's
but
tough.
I'm interested in Brad and Kate. Maybe we all have different answers to that one. Mine, very quickly, is I don't have one thing. I would say I would use one tool, and that would be use a tool like Hotjar and figure out how are people moving throughout your site, because I can't really answer that question without understanding how your site's going to work. So I would say if I were to do one thing, I would install something like Hotjar and watch my site. So that's my answer. Brad, you probably have something more insightful.
No, that's a really good one from a data perspective. From the standpoint of I mean, it's like obvious. It's like you don't need many words to present a garden. And so keep the words down. And sometimes that's easy for the gardens we work with. Others, it's like, I need to say this, or there's a lot I have, because you're immersed in your world, you're immersed in the garden, and you have all this information, you want to deliver it. You can deliver it, but you need to do it visually first, and then allow people to go deeper to get to the deeper text. So usually I say light on text, big headlines, great graphics.
I would say for me, I was halfway between the images and one other thing, but since Brad covered the images, I'll do the other thing, which is review your ticket purchasing experience.
Yeah.
Back when we were allowed to travel, I'm a huge fan of visiting a garden in pretty much every place I go to, and I'm often surprised how difficult it is to buy a ticket. So I think that's my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially to follow up on that, we've heard a lot of this whole touchless ticketing, and also making sure today that people can easily go to your website and feel that it's safe to go to your garden.
Yes.
And providing that visual and probably some special pages, some special wording on that. And we've done a lot recently on the whole touchless ticketing. So when you go there, you don't have to actually pay money to someone and have to engage with them in what would be considered too close personal space today.
Yeah.
So Paul, you mentioned that one aspect of something that a garden might put right now on their website. Are there other things in terms of reopening that gardens might want to think about adding to their websites right now?
I said is one of the biggest things that I would focus on is the fact that gardens are outside, and I think really emphasizing making sure that you may have a beautiful atrium, but really emphasizing your outside facilities and maybe what people can do when they're outside. If you allow maybe picnicking even, where they may not want to go to a facility to eat, but there's a place where you can socially distance, picnic and things like that. I would definitely, the more you can encourage someone to go and engage outside at your garden is really going to be a big selling point today.
Is this the time to redesign a website, or do you find people asking you, should I wait till things are normal? It sounds like certainly if you had those photos of outdoor locations, you're going to be pushing those to the front and maybe not those interior spaces that aren't accessible right now. But is this the right time? Should people wait?
Well, I know from my perspective, I think and I'm seeing this with some of the clients we're working with, it's like for many of them over the last several months, it's been a great time to think strategically because they're not dealing with the day-to-day that they were dealing with. And so now they can kind of step back and almost forced to step back in some ways to say, how can we do this a little different? What's a fresh way we can look at how we're presenting the garden? Not only for our immediate time where we are restricted, but for the future time when we're not and we're able to be out in public more abundantly and at gardens. So I think it's a good time to be thinking about strategically at minimum executing a new design. I don't see any other than maybe some financial reasons that it might not be a good time. But from the standpoint of availability, staff, like you guys are ready to like think it through and engage with designers and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I took a look at the next question and I'm really excited.
Okay.
So can I ask, seeing as people do more and more on their phone, is it better to focus on a mobile website or a browser website? That's a good question.
Yeah, mobile first. I mean, I think you look at the numbers, you can't come back and say, oh, we should think about the desktop first. Think of the mobile first. The desktop you can adjust and make it work. I mean, the key is it needs to work on any device. So and the device range is getting wider and wider. So mobile is one, that we all are very familiar with the portrait mobile perspective. But you've got all other kinds of devices that are all different kinds of configurations. So it needs to be fully mobile responsive. But I would think phone first if I was designing something.
Mm-hmm. Next question came in about time estimate to do a redesign, including all the way through from discovery, design, and implementation. So, Brad, what's your experience on that?
Yeah.
I think let's talk about a simple site and then maybe one that's more complex as well.
Right.
Because it does vary a lot.
Yeah,
it does. And that would be my first response.
it depends.
He took that out. Yeah, he took that off the table.
Yeah, that was the easy. That was the easy part.
So a simple site where you're not integrating with any other systems, and it's mostly just presenting the garden and how to get there and that kind of thing. That can be anywhere from a aggressive 4 to 6 months to more like 7 months. I think a fairly high-end system website that's integrating with other systems, CRM, ticketing, and all the various things, you're probably looking at start to finish a year really to do it by the time you think about the strategy at the very beginning and taking it all the way through to a launch.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about some of the, what about something like a Wix site, something like that would be, is there a way that if you're a small garden that you could do that quicker than that or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you were doing something where you wanted to do a Wix site, and use a template that's already been designed, yeah, you could get that up in a month.
Mm-hmm. Great.
How does a garden know they need to redesign a website?
Tough.
They might think it's all working.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, I think if you haven't reevaluated your website in, let's say, a couple years, then you need to consider that. I would say it's not a question of how do you know, it's just like a reoccurring event, just continuously check your site and try to improve things.
Yeah, just visit a few other sites that are in your area and your kind of world and see what does yours look like to theirs. Usually what you'll see if your site's more than 3 or 4 years old, you're going to start to see, oh wait, it's kind of feels dated. Like I think that that's a response that you would have. It feels a little dated. And if you're a destination, which a garden is, you need to, like, people are going to go to what they're attracted to, and their first impression is right on your website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think two things that I look at is, one is, if your home page and landing page are not image first, then it's time to redesign.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you find that your goal at one point was, or appears to have been, to minimize the number of clicks that someone has to do, it's probably time to redesign. It used to be that people said, oh my God, I need to have 1 or 2 clicks to get to the information that they need. Well, that's just not true anymore, right? People use their phone, they're using their mouse. They don't even know if they've clicked 1 or 7 times. Make it as seamless as possible. And that concept of 15 menus with 3 different menu bars and very, very deep menus, it's really confusing to people, and that is no longer acceptable. So I think those are the 2 things. If you're not image first, and if you are relying on deep menus, you need to redesign your site. If you have those things, if you've got a modern site that compares well to other gardens or other cultural destinations in your area, then maybe what I would do then is just take a look at, how are people moving through the garden website, and are they getting to what I want them to do well, like getting to a member page, and are they engaging, and then taking something like a Hotjar and Google Analytics and watching that, and then make tweaks, make some changes that you think would make an improvement, watch that and measure it, and then continue to refactor first.
Yeah,
that's my best advice.
Yeah, just to highlight what Paul was saying, he touched on it. Transactions, like, look at your transactions and how easy is it? Do you find them slightly frustrating? You may know why they're so complicated, but like, if it's not dead simple to buy a ticket, you got a problem.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit more on this, the data geek side of this, which is the part I really like. How do you know if your website is successful? I know you just hit on a couple of areas you can be looking at. Is there more that's part of that process?
Yeah, measuring, like everything, every transaction that you have or any engagement point should be measurable on your site through Google Analytics, or, as Paul's mentioned a couple of times, Hotjar, which gives you video of that transaction, but from that video, you can tell what's going on with the user. So you should, have goals set up on Google Analytics, so when someone's purchased a ticket, and you can measure that, and you can see it's going up or going down. And then when you redesign, you can see, how did it affect those goals, those transactions? Are we getting more? Are you seeing an uptick, or is it going down? Make adjustments, and so that those numbers move. Measuring is a really important thing.
Something I'm really curious about, because I realize there are so many of our gardens who have been engaging with their members and the public in general in a very different way. I'm just really curious what your thoughts are on those members that can't visit. I mean, even if a garden is open, it's possible there are a lot of folks that are still vulnerable, still unable to come to the garden. Are there some interesting things you're seeing as far as how gardens are engaging? And I'm assuming they're engaging for longer when they're coming to the site. If they're not planning to actually visit, they're not just like, I need directions, I need a ticket.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do virtually. I mean, again, like, a garden is like, whenever we compare the different nonprofits, it's like exciting to work on a garden project because it's so visual, and the internet is really visual. Yeah, is it better to go to the garden? Absolutely. But can you make a great video that presents on a website that takes somebody through something that's, a lesser experience, but it's right now we're all looking for those experiences that we can, even if it's just through our mind, get out of our homes. Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do visually on your site to take somebody through your garden, even virtually.
Yeah, we have.
Go ahead, Kate.
I was going to mention, we had a client that was planning on doing virtual tours, so you can set up, a kind of, if you use Google Maps, then you know what I mean, but like a navigational experience where you can see everything and look around, and it kind of brings the garden to your house. So that's one great way to do it.
Yeah, and I think gardens also, I said earlier, I talked about you got natural seasons as they change. So highlighting what's happening and engaging people maybe through social media or email posts, driving them to your website when there's a tour about to happen in a particular area. And maybe even it's highlighting the indoor parts of your garden that people can't get to today or feel uncomfortable going to. The other thing that you can do, to make membership more available, more valuable, is potentially put some of those tracks in a member-only area. So if you're a member, you can log in and you can get videos or in other instructional areas that may not be available to the public.
That's great advice. You all have shared a lot. Are there any other parting comments you'd like to share with the audience today?
I mean, I just want to share my plant because it's the longest plant I own. So that's all.
And Brad stenciled a plant on his
Yeah, right,
back wall specifically for this.
Right.
We coordinated.
Yeah.
You all are fabulous. Thank you so much. You're all such a great partner with us and really providing a lot for our attendees. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks
Take
for
care,
having us.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Bye.
I'm going to share with everyone, and again, thanks to Brad and Paul and Kate. You can learn a lot more about back office thinking at backofficethinking.com. Please stay tuned for quick announcements from the association. There will be plenty of time for you to get to your 3:20 Eastern Time next breakout session. Thank you all for coming today.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Yes. But for some reason, my final video, I have no audio. What the hell's going on?
The usual practice during National Public Gardens Week is for us to open our gardens free to the public. But this year is a little different. It is not business as usual. In fact, it's business unusual.
Aloha from National Tropical Botanical Garden headquarters on Kauai.
Hello, I'm Joan Thomas, your association's Director of External Relations. I really miss seeing all of you this year, and I look forward to getting together next year with you. The spring has been hard on all of us, but I've also heard many stories of resilience, how you kept programs going, used technology to stay connected, and kept members, your coworkers, and your community connected to you. It's also been a time when we've seen funding come to the aid of gardens, to individuals, and to community organizations. For this year's campaign, we wanted to pause and focus on what makes you stronger as a person, as a member of the association, and as an institution. We know the next few years are ones of recovery, recalibration, and reassessment, and hopefully rejuvenation for you. There are over 9,700 of you out there, members of this association, and we want to make sure that over these next few years, you have all the support you need to not only recover, but to thrive. Our goal in establishing the 9,700 Strong campaign is to support each and every one of our 9,700 members over the next few years, to help us stay responsive, and to help you stay resilient and constant in your membership with us. We started 9,700 Strong in mid-April and got early support from conference sponsors and with the help of additional champions and our exhibitors. PlantSnap, one of our affinity partners, joined in the campaign and sweetened the deal by offering a free unlimited term pro download of the PlantSnap app to donors giving $20 or more. So for the past 2 months, hundreds of people all over the US have been donating to support you, our public gardens. We're now extending the PlantSnap incentive to all of you as we close in on our campaign goal of $100,000. We're so close. I've been so amazed at the outpouring of personal support to help your fellow members, whether scholarships or member resilience. And so I hope that during this conference, you'll make a gift and join with me and others in reaching this goal. Follow the links on your conference dashboard to give, or you can text 9,700 Strong to 41444. We'll be showing this campaign thermometer throughout the conference to show progress to and hopefully beyond our goal. Thank you so much for being with us and enjoy the conference.
Hi, I'm Jamie Riccio, the association's Member Development Manager. I joined the association in January of this year, and I was looking forward to meeting all of you in Portland at my very first association conference. I wanted to give a special shout out to our sponsors and exhibitors, many of whom have been longtime supporters of our conferences and have stayed with us this year for the virtual conference. And while we don't have an exhibit hall this year for you to walk through, I did want to remind you to visit our Partner Spotlight section of our conference website. Please take a moment to interact with these members and to view their videos. Some of them have offers and other news to share and are here for you. Thanks and enjoy the conference.